Hey there, you're on the Bible Forum. I'm Warren Sprouse. We're here every Sunday night from 8 until 10 p.m. Eastern. We look at life through a biblical lens and we try to solve all the world's problems in 2 hours or less. The ministry of the Bible Forum is brought to you by Alternatives, Biblical Counseling and Education. And so we try to have at least one segment relative to the concept of counseling. And I want to talk to you today, about depression in children. Because a study has found that major depression or depressive cases have risen by 33% just since 2013 in children. However, the largest jump has been in teens and millennials. Millennials were born between 1980 and 2000. This means that young adults between 13 and 38 years of age are the ones who are becoming more and more statistically depressed. Why? Well, doctors have inquiring minds. They want to know. And their initial thinking is social media. But I would suggest that that's just a knee-jerk conclusion. However, it might not be that. The Blue Cross Blue Shield Association, which insures over 106 million people, reports that major depression cases skyrocketed between 2013 and 2016. The jump is reported even more serious among children and young adults, with depression diagnosis rising by 47% in millennials, 63% in adolescents. According to Blue Cross Blue Shield's chief medical officer, the high rates for adolescents and millennials could have substantial health impact for decades to come. The organization's Health of America report adds that more than 9 million Americans with health insurance have been diagnosed with major depression. These are the only demographics they can study. There may be much more than that. Or it's possible that with insurance, people think they're depressed. Without insurance, maybe they're not. We don't know. But women were twice as likely to be diagnosed with major depression than were men. I would suggest to you that this has probably always been the case for a lot of different reasons, some of them men. The study found depression was likely linked to issues other than those which the patient was dealing. This is because 85% of the people diagnosed were also suffering from another chronic condition as well. Physicians noted that the increasing use of electronics and social media, in their words, may be playing a major role in the growing number of depression cases, especially in younger patients. I would scratch out the word may and put in the word is. That's me. One doctor, a woman by the name of Karen Horowitz, said, quote, increased use of electronics, video games, more commonly in boys, and social media texting, more commonly in girls, can lead to increased conflict both within the home and among peers. High users of social media have been linked with higher rates of social isolation than low users. This is where I tell you, go ahead, say it. Duh. We need experts to tell us this, right? Blue Cross found that the highest rates of depression cases were being found in New England, with Rhode Island and Maine registering the highest rates in the area. Can you say isolation? Limitation? The lowest rates of depression in the United States were found in Hawaii, maybe not this week with the volcano erupting, followed by Alaska, Arizona, Colorado, Nevada, Wyoming. Do you see it? Areas of the country where people are more active out of doors represent lower depression rates. It also turns out that age makes a significant difference. The measurement was in whether or not you find the workplace an oasis or a stressful nightmare. Millennials are more stressed than baby boomers by a margin of 100%. Millennials at 27%, baby boomers at 12%. Millennials were also more likely to let stress interfere with their work. A third of millennials said they felt stress that made them less productive, while only 19% of their older colleagues felt the same. So why is all this? One theory is an increasingly insecure job prospect, although that should have changed by now, as these people are older and the overwhelming workloads seem to be mitigated. So inquiring minds want to know, how do you define overwhelming? My guess is anything that requires them to do what they've been told and to keep doing it until they finish. My observation: millennials did share one anxiety with their older colleagues. They fear that they could talk to no one at work about it. Across the generation surveyed, only 14% of employees said they were comfortable talking to their manager about their stress. And the experts agree that if we want to break the silence around mental health struggles, it would begin with managers communicating that it's okay to talk about it. Now, the author suggests talking to your boss. He said upper management to bottom management, talk to them about your mental health problems. He says it would send a message to the entire community that it's okay to talk about these things. It would also send a message to your boss that maybe they need to be looking for replacement. She went on to say the goal was to allow people to feel like they could talk about this earlier instead of waiting until it's a problem. I have a personal observation here. I think this is the kind of nonsense that created the problems in the first place. Too much touchy-feely. Too much feel-good nonsense. Now, it's good to talk about problems. It's good to get it out. It's even good to tell your boss you're struggling. Is that it? Pretty much. In my Counseling Corner segments, I've tried to deal with this sort of nonsense. I know. I'm not a psychiatrist. I'm not a psychologist, so I don't know anything. But my generation didn't suffer from this stuff. My parents' generation, the greatest generation, the generation that went through the Great Depression, and just when they were starting to get their life on target, on track, they were dragged off to a war. The greatest generation didn't suffer like this. And I'm thinking there's a message in here somewhere. What is it about millennials? And to a lesser degree, boomers. And what is it about those coming along behind that creates social dynamic whereby they feel unable to talk to their supervisors when they're having problems at work? Now, the answer varies with the person. Personalities enter into this and all the rest of it. But generally, these are people not used to interpersonal communication. They've talked to everybody with an iPad, an iPhone, an Android, whatever it might be, a little text something or other. And the more time a young person spends alone, the less their social gene gets exercised. I'm not alone, I'm with my friends. You're on a machine in the closet. I've seen it. Young adults who stress, struggle, complain about their jobs or their lives but are never going to talk to anyone. Never going to talk to that person who could help because, well, it won't do any good. And unless they have an overtly social gene, personality, that dynamic will continue because there will be no information to the contrary, nothing penetrating their psyche or their thought process. In the end, they will be almost completely isolated emotionally and convinced that their life is not worth living or something like that. Their diminished communication and joy will be diagnosed as depression. And of course, we have drugs, and we have therapies, and we have institutions to fix all that, right? No. No drug known to mankind fixes depression. You have a disease, you get an antibiotic, it clears out the disease. The drugs for depression don't do that. They alter how you feel. But nothing internal has changed, unless it is biological, and then they can do something, they can measure that. You're just trading one dependency for another. And talking about dependencies, going to a counselor can also be a crutch, because you'll feel so much better after talking with a trusted psychologist, psychiatrist, or whatever. Did you know that most people never go back to their counselors? They go once or twice and they don't go anymore. Did you know that? There's a couple reasons for it. One is they tell them what's going on, and the honest counselor tells them what the problem really is. And they reject the counselor, convinced the counselor doesn't know anything about them or how they feel or what the problem really is. Or they go a couple of times, they feel a little bit better, and then they say, see, it works, and they quit. And we hear it all the time. Well, I've been to counselors, but they don't really understand. And largely, they don't. It takes time for someone to actually get enough practical information to be able to accurately diagnose this sort of nebulous social problem. It's easier to prescribe a drug or to get them to come back once a month or once a week for the next 2 years at $80 an hour, 45-minute hour, or whatever the structure is. And so the question is, what's going on? What's going on is the culture is becoming weaker emotionally, largely because life has become so easy. Because parenting is now a lost art. Because wealth has become more important than family, children, social stability, character. We actually believe that we can live any way we choose and the results are going to be largely the same. Well, I'm here to tell you they won't. They aren't. But we have technologies to fix what's broken, don't we? Did you know people who have less wealth, less contact with the larger world, are happier and more well-balanced on average? A team of happiness researchers at the Vancouver School of Economics and McGill University recently published a working paper on the geography of well-being in Canada. They compiled 400,000 responses to a pair of national Canadian surveys, allowing them to parse out distinctions of well-being at the level of more than 1,200 communities, representing the country's entire geography. When researchers ranked 1,215 communities by average happiness, they found that average population density in the 20% most miserable communities was more than 8 times greater than the 20% of communities. Their conclusion was life is significantly less happy in urban areas. Duh. Remember in the beginning What states in the country do we have less of this kind of thing? Out west, where people have to get out and do things. It's not in an urban city situation. When did stress become a disease or a malady or a disorder? When did the amount of stress in my life begin to interfere with my earning a living, taking care of my family? Was it during the Great Depression, when the pressures were immense and real? No. Was it during World War II? Nobody was untouched by that. People went off to war. Those that didn't go off to war had to do without. And they didn't have their loved ones around, and sometimes they never came back, and things were tough. Not a rise in depression then either. It started with the baby boomers. Boomers whose parents wanted to give them more than they had growing up. They grew up during the Depression. Baby boomers who resented a conflict. Congress never declared war on Vietnam. Baby boomers who embraced the noise that they called music. Can you say Janis Joplin? Do you have visions of Woodstock? A frenetic amalgamation of counter rhythms deliberately designed to create stress in the human body? No, that's not my opinion. Musicians know that emphasizing the second and fourth beats rather than the traditional first and third creates tension in the human body, tension that leads to frenzy. They call it a backbeat. The classic case of if you have no real talent, play louder. Or if you want to stimulate people, start with the subliminal. It then doesn't have to be good musically as long as it moves people emotionally. It was no surprise that baby boomers gravitated to drugs, to alcohol, and to sex as entertainment. And these are the people who raised the generation we now call millennials. Absentee parents, where mothers went to work full-time. Parents passing along their values and addictions to another generation. A generation that did not understand anything but excess. And now we wonder why they feel depressed. People with no real vision, no drive, no purpose, no hope are people who are probably going to feel depressed and not know why. People who suffer from genetic damage, they can feel depressed. Do enough drugs, your kids will have genetic problems. People who have nothing of value to do or to look forward to, yeah, they can feel depressed. People in abusive relationships, physical or emotional, can feel depressed. Relationships born of nothing more than the physical, the emotional. People with a genetic predisposition toward depression are going to feel depressed. People who feel cut off from God can feel depressed. But the operative word in all of this is feel. I know depression has physical effects. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the feelings. If you eliminate the causes, those feelings will change. I would suggest stop giving in to your feelings, no matter what it is. Start being responsible and productive. Stand up straight. Look for ways to help other people. Give away a little of yourself. Be honest with yourself and with others. Eat right. We don't even know how to do that anymore. Sleep right. 8 to 10 hours a night. Exercise regularly. And get in touch with God. And in the midst of all of that, turn off the electronics. Those people on Facebook are not your friends. The people you live with, the people you interact with, those people who share your values, they are your friends. And when they insult you or hurt you or whatever, you can talk to them. And you can repair that relationship. The people online, they're just disembodied opinions that no one should listen to. But we have an entire generation now, too, who think they are more important than family. We did that to them. Depression is going to increase.